Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Michael Conley, HP CareerNet and Health Promotion Live. Here we are at the book club. This is our third or fourth. I can't remember for sure, but certainly been looking forward to this one. Actually, I think, Vic, you were the one who you were sort of talking about the book club and thinking we would do it. And you said, hey, I'd like to do that. So, yeah, anything for you. That's the thing. Today we have On Purpose. Let me get back to the title.
It's called On Purpose, and it's lessons in life and health from the frog, the dung beetle, and Julia.
Dr. Vic Strecker is a professor at University of Michigan and author of this graphic novel. So, Vic, why don't you just talk about the book?
I will. First of all, Michael, I thank you so much for inviting me to do this, and thanks to all of you who are in this book club. It's kind of a cool idea. I've never done a webinar book club, so I don't have any slides, and it really is a discussion. I'm hoping to sit in the back a lot and let other people talk about the book as well. I'm assuming that you have all read the book just like in a book club. If not, well, I'm sure you can listen in. I'll give a real brief description of the book and why I developed it. I have been a professor at the University of Michigan, and I have a Center for Health Communications Research that I founded at the University of Michigan. And when this kind of work, looking at my work is using digital media to help people make changes in their lives. I'm assuming probably most of you know that. And in 1997, I created a company called Health Media. Health Media was sold to Johnson & Johnson in 2008, and I started trying to figure out what I was going to do in my life then. Whether I would start another business, just simply work with the current company, whether I would go back and become a professor full-time. But for a year, I kind of took a half-time leave just to try to figure all that out. And that's when my daughter passed away. Her name is Julia, and she was a heart transplant recipient. She caught a virus out of the blue when she was 1. She was born, as she liked to say, a 10 out of 10. She was healthy. But she, while we were in the Netherlands, she caught a chickenpox virus, which almost all kids do, but this virus attacked her heart and destroyed it. So she became one of the first children to get a new heart. And as a result of that, I started thinking about my own life pretty differently. In fact, if it weren't for her, I never would have created Health Media. I think it was this urgency that I had in life that she presented as well. So I realized that every day of her life was very special, and we didn't know how long she would be alive. She could have lived to be 70 or 90, or could have passed away at 1. We just didn't know how many days she had. And in thinking about that, I thought about my own life as well, and thought, I'm not here forever. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and great Roman emperor, said 2,000 years ago, don't act as if you're going to live 10,000 years. So he would wake up every morning. He wrote this in his book Meditations, which is an amazing book. And he said, every morning I wake up and assume I'm going to die. And in assuming that, he actually lived a gigantic life. He became, the greatest Roman emperor that ever lived, really. And so I created Health Media because I wanted to really put a stamp on, the planet if I could, especially with all of these other companies coming out with programs. This is in 1997 when the internet was just fledgling. But there are a lot of companies that didn't really use science, and I wanted to apply science to what we were doing in this field a little more. And I think you know, that became a very successful company. We reached over 40 million people, so I feel very good about that, and that's something I'd feel very comfortable putting on my headstone or having somebody talk about at my memorial service. And while that sounds a little bit strange or morbid possibly, it's something I don't think we do enough. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross once said, if we each contemplated our own death every day, just very briefly, we would probably have a much more peaceful, happy world. And so that's one part of this book. Julia was an inspiration for me to think more about the finiteness of our lives and to live every day with a stronger purpose in our life. And when I started reading more about the science of purpose, I realized that people with a purposeful life actually live longer. They are far less likely 10 years later to become depressed. They are less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease 7 years later. They're less likely to develop heart attacks, stroke. They're more likely to get involved in health promoting programs such as quitting smoking or managing their diabetes. And in fact, they are so active. Once you have this purpose, you become so active in your health. I actually don't know of any other concept from any other model, the health belief model, the stages of change model, social cognitive theory, or any of these that seem to be equivalent to this power of having a purpose. And that was surprising because I'd never learned anything about purpose. It seemed like a pretty ephemeral philosophical concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to put your finger on what is a purpose in life. So I started reading more about it, learning that indeed you could measure it, learning that indeed for a very long time people have worked on developing purposes in their lives. And Viktor Frankl, who was a psychotherapist in the 1930s, who went through 3 concentration camps, he found that people who would lose their purpose while in the concentration camps would then tend to get sick and then die. But what he noticed is that first you tended to lose your purpose or your meaning in life. So he created something called logotherapy or meaning therapy, which is designed to help people develop a greater purpose in their life. And of course, Viktor Frankl being a psychotherapist, his mode of delivery of this intervention was a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which is great, and it explored his own journey going through concentration camps, but at the same time also he talked all about how you could find a purpose in your life, and he also talked about logotherapy. But if you saw him, you'd probably end up on a couch, for once a week for an hour, and maybe for years and years he'd be doing this. And I thought, well, what would the postmodern version of this logotherapy be? Because it really made a lot of sense. First of all, there's a lot more science now than there was in Viktor Frankl's day. But I think the modern version of this would be a book, but maybe not written as a standard self-help type of book. I decided to write this as a comic book, as a graphic novel, and really a journey, but the same kind of journey, that was threaded through Viktor Frankl's book, a journey that involved a difficult situation and trying to become more resilient as a result, and then at the same time teaching people. And in the form of therapy, my work at Health Media and my work at our Center for Health Communications Research has been using new media, digital media, so I thought I would create an app to help people identify a purpose in their life. And it's a very carefully thought through app, I hope anyway, that involves first identifying your core values, and then you can also start contemplating your own death, as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said. But in this one, you can actually meet the Grim Reaper, and you can put down very graphically what you'd like on your headstone. And all of those things between values affirmation and the headstone are intended to help you develop a stronger purpose in your life. And then every day, you can use this app to start looking at your alignment between how you live your life every 24 hours and your purpose in life. So are you way out of aligned in the last 24 hours, or are you very much in line? And then we also look at 5 things. One is sleep. How well did you sleep? How present or mindful you were. I like to use the word presence, as Eckhart Tolle uses the word presence. He doesn't use mindful because he says when you're really present here and now in the moment, your mind should not be full. You shouldn't be mindful, you should be mind empty. So I like the word presence. You should be active, and we ask how active you are. We ask how creative you've been, and we ask how well you are eating. So S for sleep, P for presence, A for activity, C for creativity, and E for eating amounts to the word space. So did you give yourself space in the last 24 hours? And then after 10 days, this app identifies which of those space behaviors are most related to your own alignment. So you're able to become more more understanding. You become your own researcher, really, when it comes to your own behaviors. So I think that this is a neat, interesting direction for the future of health risk appraisal. We now have over 2,000 people who are using the app, and so we have a lot of data that we're starting to study how people are actually using it, but we're also studying which of these space criteria are most important and which are most important to different kinds of people. So we can look at their age and their gender, and we can look at their values and see what kinds of different people need different things in their lives, and then we can start making recommendations. So we're working on a second version of this now as we speak, actually. So I'm going to stop there. I've kind of been talking a little bit about the book. I hope you've read it. I hope you enjoyed it. But whether you enjoyed it or not, or whether there are pieces you didn't understand or liked or didn't like, I would sure be interested in hearing from that. And I'd like to sit back a little bit and hear from you.
Super. And I should have said in the beginning, and I didn't, that if you would like me to unmute your microphone, please just raise your hand and I will do that. Let me double check right now. Okay. Come on, you guys, be brave. It's a book club, which means you must speak. So maybe I'll pick on somebody local, which would be Joe. Joe, I've just unmuted your microphone.
Well, thank you very much.
So you just finished the book.
I just read it this morning, Dr. Stryker, and I really enjoyed it. First comic book I've read in years. I'm an older guy. I've more or less lived most of my life, and my purpose I've never really thought about until I read your graphic novel. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
It's about things I've heard in the past from other sources, but it was never put together in such a fashion as the graphic novel. This is a journey, and I kept thinking throughout the book of whether I was going to be turn out to be a dung beetle or a frog. And I think I've been a frog and a dung beetle during my lifetime.
Are you a frog in boiling water right now?
No, the water is rather tepid at this point.
Oh, okay.
I have been in some boiling water in the past. Fortunately, I was able to jump. But I enjoyed the book very much. I think I'd recommend this for anybody to read through and just get a reminder on what life is all about. It's easy to get caught up in the everyday goals and dreams we might have without concentrating on ourselves. As far as I like the idea of presenting your lessons to class, and each person in the class had a different viewpoint on what life was all about. And
that was really fun.
Came together at the end was very enlightening to me, heartwarming. By the way, I feel so saddened at the loss of your daughter. I don't know how I could go through something like that, losing a child in that fashion.
Yeah.
But I commend you for putting it all together in this book entitled On Purpose.
It's funny, originally I wasn't going to put Julia in this book at all. She certainly was the motivation for writing the book, but I was going to write it, well, first I was going to write a journal article, and then I realized about 12 people would read it. And I just thought, this is not going to reach, have the impact that I wanted to have. And then I thought about writing a self-help book, and I actually started the first couple of chapters of the self-help book, and I realized that I actually don't like self-help books that much, not most of them, and because I was reading my own book and not liking it. I realized I was basically saying, I'm a PhD and I know a lot, and here's a lot of advice, and maybe meet a person that I've met who has a purpose or doesn't, and move forward. And I just thought, God, this is so boring. And so I started, and so I brought in a friend of mine who's a Hollywood screenwriter, and we spent a week together actually in northern Michigan, and we started talking about it and reviewing different ways of doing it, a book. And then a couple of really amazing books had just come out that were graphic novels, and I decided to explore that a little bit. And then I just cold called the vice president of DC Comics in New York. I was in New York at the time, and I just cold called him out of the blue and said, I literally just called DC Comics and said, could I talk to your vice president of creative? And they said, yeah, sure. and then I just told him what I wanted to do, and he said, well, do you drink wine? And I said, yeah, actually I do. He said,
are you drinking it now?
Yeah, so, well, he said, there's a really good wine bar down the street. You buy me a glass of Cabernet, and I'm yours for an hour. And so he said, meet me in on the Batman floor. I'm serious. So I get into the elevator, I get out, and there's Batman, like the original Batman's costume in the movie, and then all these, big, beautiful poster boards of Batman comics, and all these people drawing Batman all over the place. It was like the coolest thing. I'm not even a big comic person, to be honest, but when I saw this, I just thought, this is amazing. So we ended up drinking a whole bottle of wine together, just to be perfectly honest, and it was about the cheapest $130 bottle of, consultation that I've ever had. We ended up spending about 2.5 hours there, and we talked and talked about what I would need, and then he made some recommendations, and I ended up with my illustrator. So it was really a fun experience. And then exploring how to do something like this. I've never written a book for the popular press anyway, in general. But this is just such a blast. I learned a lot.
I can imagine. And what a great example of how you might think, how do I do this? What the heck, I'm going to pick up the phone and it worked. Who says, why assume the answer is no?
Yeah, exactly. I just kind of did assume the answer would be no. And I had, by the way, tried a few other people and, got no response. But, this is kind of cool.
Oh, can I get unmuted again?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Joe, hang on just a second. Okay, you are unmuted, Joe. Sorry.
Thank you, Michaela.
Sorry.
Thank you, Michaela. Just another comment about the form, the graphic novel. I really enjoyed the flow of the graphic novel. It's an easy read. It only takes an hour or two. But when you get into the bibliography, it gets into the more meat and substance of the rationale of the comments you make throughout the book. And that's when it gets a little more, what am I trying to say, academic.
Scientific. Yeah.
Scientific. Yep.
I read over 200 books or 200 articles for this, and over 50 books. And so I was, I've spent 3 years on this thing, and it really was a research endeavor.
Yeah.
And you can see some of the fruits of the research in the back if you're interested in that. But it's funny. I was in Napa, California last week giving a talk at a wellness summit, and the CEO of a large company came up and he said, I was doing a book signing, and he said, "This will be the second book I've ever read in my life." And I said, "You're kidding, really? Are you serious?" Because he was in his 60s. And he said, "I'm serious. I have read lots and lots of articles, but I find books boring, and I just can't get through a book. So I just, I've never read a book in my life other than one. So this will be my second book."
Wow.
Reading it because it's a graphic novel. And
it's an easy read. But I want to spend some time in the bibliography because it looks like an outstanding pooling of resources from everything is said in the book, and I just want to spend some time there. I have to make one comment about the forward by Dr. Ornish.
Yeah, Ornish was kind enough.
I thought that was interesting as well. One of the things that struck me was his discussion of stress and how your nerve endings or your chromosomes endings, telomeres. Am I saying that correctly? Telomeres. I would just like to know how you get those measured. I don't know. I'm short or long at this time.
Yeah, well, you know what's interesting? They're not only measuring the length of our telomeres. So here's a little cable that I have. Imagine this cable is a chromosome. So at the end is this thing called the telomere, which is kind of like this cap. But they can measure the length of that. They can also measure telomerase, which is the enzyme repairing telomeres, which is great. And now increasingly they're just measuring DNA damage. So imagine being able to measure DNA damage right on your iPhone. So you say, well, I think I'll just put my finger on this iPhone and there's a little thing that measures DNA damage. That we can't do that yet, obviously, but boy, we might be able to do that in 5 years, 10 years. And then okay, I'm going to spend the whole week eating blueberries and see what that does to my DNA damage. If that reduces it. Or I'm going to develop a strong purpose in life, or I'm going to, whatever. This will be a very different world where you become your own researcher. And in a way, this is an endeavor to do that.
Excellent.
That's amazing. That's just amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Joe, if you would click the green microphone, you can mute your own microphone so that way when you want to comment, you can do that.
I have done it.
Thank you. All right, we have a hand up. Thank you for raising your hand. Your microphone is live. You are...
Hi, this is Joachim Fischer from Heidelberg. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I also very much enjoyed the book. So I think it reminds us of, as Europeans, of the very famous Asterix and Obelix, the small Gallian village that resisted against the Romans, and it was extremely popular. It's kind of in that style. So it's a great way to transport subliminal something that is very difficult and impossible if you write a kind of self-help book. And in my past time, I have been involved in writing self-help books like travel guides, so I know that business. The question that I have, and the point that I would like to add, because I read the book 4 weeks ago, and I thought, you know, how do we close the gap between the 40 million that attended Health Media and the 2,000 that have so far used the app? Is it just a matter of getting the app more prominent, or is there probably some inherent issue that we may have to think to resolve? And what I would like to remind is when Jung was talking about what the themes are that people talk about when they come to his psychoanalysis, he said almost no one above the age of 35 does not at some stage talk about what happens between here and dying.
I'm sorry, I lost that last sentence. Could you say that again? That's really important.
Yeah, Jung said he has almost never encountered anyone seeking psychoanalysis with him and was above the age of 35 that didn't ask the question of what happens between here and dying, the purpose question.
Yeah.
Now we are both well above 50. I mean, that's what we can admit to, and for us, kind of the purpose question.
Okay, all right. I am just a little older than that.
Yeah. So I am. So
I don't like
us,
this line of questioning at all.
The purpose question is we're not in a concentration camp. We live nice lives. I'm a tenure professor, so life could be very easy, and I could just attend to the golf course, but somehow the purpose thing creeps up.
Yeah.
What I have experienced, because when I set up the institute 8 years ago, everyone seeking a job, and I looked from my office to the cemetery of the Mannheim cemetery, and in my past life I was a pediatric intensivist. Vic and what I shared with him, that I could have been the daughter taking care of him. So anyone who asked for a job, I asked them, what would you have to be written on your tombstone?
Really?
And it occurs that there are people out there, and young people out there, even in their 20s, who start thinking about the purpose. But there are also many, many young people out there where the purpose is, yes, I want to make money, or you know, who are kind of not yet attached to that whole purpose story. So they wouldn't immediately jump on being Mother Teresa. And I have been thinking about how could we translate the purposes into purposes that are more directly to relate to what the people are doing. Like, I want to give you an example here. If we're currently consulting BMW, and a particular department that is there for making sure that there are no faults in the parts that BMW assembles to the nice cars. So there are two ways to deal with it. You could either say, oh, you know, we have the goal to have 0 errors in 1 million parts because then we're the better car maker company. That doesn't really resound with people. But the purpose could be, I'm part of BMW, I'm part in the quality department, I make sure that people who drive a BMW enjoy driving the car and it doesn't break down, and that is my contribution. And what I have been thinking about, how could we expand that concept so that the hairdresser, the person working at the cashier at Walmart, so that everyone can see, here in my space, I can make a contribution, and whatever I do, even if it's just sweeping the floor of the street, or collecting the garbage in New York City, I'm contributing something, and translate from this purpose more to what are you currently doing, and how, with where you are, you can contribute that this place is a less shitty world to live in. Kind of expand on your concept.
Yeah, Joachim, first of all, thank you for being part of this book group, and thank you for those comments. They are so insightful, and your work is just remarkable. Your consulting work, everything you've been doing, it has really been inspirational to me. I want to say that. It's so funny that your office overlooks the Mannheim Cemetery. Our School of Public Health overlooks the cemetery as well, and it's interesting. Maybe you have to have a cemetery next to where you work to remind you of your purpose. But I would like to say that what you're talking about is what my colleague here at the University of Michigan, her name is Jane Dutton, and she calls this job crafting. And it's the idea of, regardless of what job you have, it's important to ascribe some meaning to it and actually craft and recraft your job to the point that it does have meaning. She interviewed the custodial staff at our University of Michigan Medical Center, and the night staff, who really have nothing to do except, you know, sweep the floors and keep everything clean, one would think, and are paid a pretty low wage. And she found one person, for example, who rearranges and puts a flower in front of where a woman who's been in a coma for a couple of years and hasn't woken up yet, she just lays there, and the custodian rearranges those flowers so that if she were to wake up, this would be the first thing that she saw, some fresh flowers. They regard the hospital as theirs. They regard the patients as theirs, a number of these custodians. And then she found that their absenteeism was zero. Zero. They never missed work. They were completely interested and engaged in what they were doing and felt they were part of a team. And what do we do then as the staff in the hospital? Often we ignore them. Often we regard them as people who are so different. We've never met any of them. We don't know their names. We don't really care about them. And so this to me is a tragedy. It's stupidity at the organizational level. Quite honestly, there is so much purpose that can be derived from one's work, from one's family. When I started trying to find my own purpose after my daughter died, I kind of had lost my purpose because she was a big part of my purpose. And I sat down and I talked with Dean Ornish, actually, in Sausalito, California, where his center is. And he said, well, you have another daughter, don't you? And I said, yeah, Rachel. He said, well, you know, that's your purpose, isn't it? And what else do you do? Well, I teach. Well, that's your purpose. And he really kind of recast this. He was very, very helpful as I was trying to repurpose my life, which now is to focus much more attention on my family and to treat every one of my students as if they were my own daughter.
That's lovely.
Well,
you know,
it is my purpose. By the way, I need a lot of energy to do that because I have a lot of students, and I love these students. And every time they want to have a meeting, I think, oh gosh, I have so many meetings that are going on. But then I think, well, what would I want for my daughter? And I think about this. So, you know, that's my own work purpose. But a person who is a custodian at an elementary school that we interviewed said, my purpose is to give my students, he said, a clean and safe environment. Well, everybody knew that custodian's name. They loved him. They remembered him years after they left elementary school, even as old as adults. Adults remembered this guy. So just imagine an environment, a work environment like that, where people are more purposeful, where they're more connected based on their purpose. That's something that kind of is melding organizational development with our standard, more traditional wellness programs. And I think we could really do something here. And that's something I'm interested in. I know, Joaquin, you've been very interested in this.
Yeah, just probably one thing that I'd like to add. During my career as a pediatric intensivist, I was in charge of talking to the parents where the children were dying and where it was clear they were going to die. And this has been probably for 7 or 8 years. This was my task because I had a kind of an education that made me kind of being the one of the consultants doing that job. I have not come across a single parent of these probably more than 100 I talked to where the ultimate question in that crisis wasn't, why is this happening and how do I go on living with this? And I centered the talks around transforming the way they look at it, integrating it in a purposeful way into their future life. So I remember that I sent one guy away and I said, well, I'd like to hear from you when you're well again. And because we were very connected, I was sure that he would finally write me a postcard when he was well again, and he did it 3 years later. And most of these parents were able to receive an enormous power of that tragedy that happened because it had transformed their life, how they were looking at life. So what that taught to me was that ultimately, if you're threatened really to the existence, the only question that remains, because there were millionaires, bankers, and very poor Afghani refugees. The ultimate thing that matters, you know, you can have your Mercedes and your driver and your private airplane and nothing, that all goes away. It's kind of, you know, why am I here? And I think that is underlying the big success that currently pharmaceutical companies have with going into the market of tailored, individualized cancer treatment, because most people live that they still have unfinished business and they know it deep inside and they can't go.
Right.
I told you that you know, if I would have to go tomorrow, it's fine. You know, I've already overlived what it's my personal feeling, but so I think most people carry something that they know. Oh, you know, if I was really connected to this purpose, then this why I'm here, then I would do this and this. And what I think is an obligation, or what we should do as the people who understand this and who are in research and who have an influence on public health or what happens out there or found in health media, is that we think, how can we contribute that people get a little more connected to this, because that may even then transcend the current way of the American and German and European capitalism, inequality, and all these things that you see out happening, that they're simply not fair, you know, because ultimately we're not much different from the beggar who's living under the bridge of Chicago, when it comes to the purpose question.
Thank you. Does anyone else have something they would like to say about the book?
Actually, we have questions here, and I was just trying to see if I could get Joe to read them, because they're just a little bit too small for me to read. You know, I suppose I could give them, I could upgrade you, and you could read them yourself, which, oh, wait a minute.
You could just read them, Michael, if you want.
Okay. All right. Oh, geez. Can you read that? Can you read it?
Yeah, I'll read it for you.
Thank you.
As more health and wellness professionals are exploring the 5 essential elements of well-being, I think this book could be used as an intervention for the purpose domain. Any thoughts about developing a companion training product worksite wellness educators / program managers could use for a worksite workshop based? I scroll a little bit.
Boy, that's a really great question. I'll just be as honest as I possibly can about this. When I wrote this book, it was really in part a trauma narrative. It kind of was like a baby. It had to come out, you know, a poison. I don't know which one it was, but it had to get out. And I feel so good that it's gotten out. And it's resonated with people unlike anything else I've done in my career, I must say that. I've learned from so many people that so many people have these powerful stories to tell. I'm just but one of so many millions of people who have these stories. And I started thinking, how could I reach more people? One way, of course, is just through the book and selling it on Amazon and through, you know, my website called Dung Beetle Press. And that's happening, that's working, and we have a second printing coming up, and that's nice. But to really reach people, I think a group that has really resonated with this are work sites, workplaces. And it's just, as Joaquin was talking about, it makes a lot of sense to think about connecting your purpose with your work. You know, that's not your only part of your life, but it is a big, important part, and obviously it's where a lot of wellness programming often occurs. Is there a dog in the background there, Michaela?
Oh, did you see his tail?
Wait, before I'm going on, I want us all to say hi to your dog.
Come here, Gruffy.
What is your dog's name?
It's Gruffy.
Gruffy?
Yeah,
that is
Gruffy.
the cutest dog. Hi, Gruffy.
It's Gruffy. He's McGruff, the crime dog. Sorry about that.
All right. Nice. You're lucky you can have your dog at work.
I know.
So anyway, the bottom line is that I am very, very interested in building a training program for employees in workplaces. And our new version of our app may or may not have a dung beetle in it, because obviously our app is very connected to the book. And the book could be used, but maybe, you know, it wouldn't be right for everybody. But we're now, through the summer, going to explore just what kind of app, what kind of dashboard should go into this, how to help people become really their own best researchers. And we are talking to a number of people about this. The one thing that I absolutely will insist upon, though, is that this is coming from a basis of science, from good, strong philosophy, and from my own heart. So I'm working through the summer on trying to build something new, which would include some kind of training programming. And we're starting to talk to a couple of companies that we could essentially start piloting this with and developing it. So if anybody is interested in being more involved in that from a workplace, please send me an email, strecker@umich.edu. I'd really be more than happy to talk to you about that.
Wonderful. Well, sorry, Gruffy's totally pulling my attention now.
Pulling all of our attention.
I know, since you said his name. It's funny. I was thinking about, well, first of all, when you first told me about the book, a graphic novel, and I thought, what is that? Oh, it's a comic book. But what I guess, unusual sort of bare essence, accessible format this is. How did you get to there? Was it the Batman place that kind of said, hey, this would be crazy, let's do it?
Well, I think if you've heard me present in the past or taken any class from me in the past, you'll know that I'm a very visual person. I'm a visual thinker. And it's a funny thing. One time at Health Media, this is years ago, I just decided to pop a question into our health risk appraisal that asked people, are you a visual thinker or do you like to read things? And I think it was over 90% said I'm a visual thinker and I like visuals. And there's good data now that shows that most people do prefer something. People tend to have movies in their heads or pictures in their heads, and they elaborate on those a lot more cognitively. So I just thought, even from a communication perspective, this might just be a little more impactful for people. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I was aiming at.
Yeah, well, it is certainly very visually beautiful, and I felt like I was really experiencing it.
Thank you.
More than I would if it was just the written word. So I think it was totally effective.
Thanks.
I was thinking about, how sort of getting to purpose, but how easy it would have been for you and for a lot of other people, of course, to have gotten stuck in that place that, my daughter has died. How do I move forward?
Yeah. Well, this certainly happens with a lot of people, and I think what we're really talking about is resilience. And some people who go to the Gulf War, some soldiers go, and about 80% of the soldiers see action. They see something that was very impactful that could cause PTSD, but not everybody gets PTSD. So this has been studied and found that one of the top moderators of whether you end up getting PTSD or not after you've seen action in the Gulf War is whether you have a purpose in your life and whether you can repurpose yourself, because once you come back, very often you're no longer a soldier, and then you have to say, well, what do I do now? And some people do shrink, but I recognize that almost as a form of grieving as well. Or if you lose your job, you have to repurpose yourself. If you lose your spouse in some way through a divorce or actual loss, you have to repurpose your life. All of these things have some type of grieving in them, and I started thinking more about that and realizing, we all could crawl up in little balls, but it is a choice you make yourself. That's for sure. It is simply a choice where you say, am I going to crawl into a little hole and not come out? It's funny, I was, it's kind of a personal story, but I was going through the cemetery where my daughter, where we got her a plot, and I learned about this cemetery, and I went through the history of it, and it turned out there was a woman who, after she lost a child, she walked for the next 50 years of her whole life, dressed in black, walked through the cemetery every day. And she always dressed in black, and she didn't talk to anybody anymore. And after a few years, people didn't want to talk to her either, quite honestly. And I thought, God, I could see how that could happen. You really could do that. And it was kind of at that moment I thought, I really do need to make a decision here. Am I going to live or am I going to die? And that is something everybody who has gone through this kind of experience, I believe, needs to make.
Well, if you have your microphone unmuted and you would like to speak, go ahead. And if you haven't had your microphone unmuted yet, do raise your hand and I will unmute you. The app, is it available both Android and iPhone?
Yeah, we built the app so that, first of all, the app is free. We just hope a lot of people use it. And like Joaquin said, you know, we'd reach 40 million people with health media. Now we have 2,000. You know, it's been out just a few months now, and we're really trying to encourage use. And we're looking at different ways of doing that. Work sites are one real possible way. But for right now, the app is free and available through iTunes for your iPhone or iPad. And it also is available on the web. And it's called a web-enabled app, meaning that if you have an Android or any other smartphone, a Samsung phone, something, any of those, you can use the web version of this on dungbeetle.org. And it's enabled to be able to be used on any phone that you like. Or you can just go online and use it on your computer if you want. At dungbeetle.org, you can just sign up for the app.
Okay, well, let's see. Oh gosh. Okay, so yeah, let's see. People are wondering, you know, technology is always the thing. So let's see. What happens if I go through and I just unmute people? We'll see if the world blows up or anything. I'm just going to go crazy and encourage you guys to participate. We'll see what happens. So you are all unmuted. So please feel free to comment, question, remark at will, because I know you guys have a lot to say, and I totally don't get the being afraid of a microphone because, you know, I love mine.
This is Sarah Grawl.
All right, Sarah, good job.
Hello. I'll confess I haven't read the book. I just got the invitation a couple days ago, but I'm already multitasking and ordering from Amazon, and can't wait to get it in my hands. It's a wonderful story, and it's I think timely for any person. You know, it doesn't really matter what age you are, but I think the message truly is timeless.
Super. Well, thanks for being a very brave person.
Well, sure, and thank you for sharing, you know, Vic, especially the personal nature of your transformation and growth. That's extremely admirable.
You know, I don't consider it admirable, but thank you very much. I consider it something that I needed to do. What I really do admire are the colleagues that I work with in this field. The field of health promotion, disease prevention, wellness, public health. I told my older daughter recently, who is getting married in 2 weeks, and
congratulations.
So, about that. Guess who's marrying them? Me.
Oh,
awesome.
Cool.
Crazy, isn't that? They asked me if I'd marry them. But anyway, gosh, now I forgot what I was going to say. About my marriage. Right, yeah.
Oh, you were talking about admiration for your colleagues.
Oh, right. I was telling my daughter, who got into this field of public health, before she did, and I wasn't recommending anything to her because I knew she would reject whatever I told her when she was a teenager. But I said, whatever you pick a profession that has amazing colleagues, that are supportive colleagues. And she has now recently said the same thing. We're in a field, we're blessed to be in a field with such neat, supportive people that I actually felt comfortable talking about this in this field. Whereas I think if I were in I don't know, who knows, maybe in banking or in something else, maybe or you know, if I was a trader or something on the New York Stock Exchange, maybe I wouldn't feel so comfortable talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. That
it's cool. It
is a wonderful bunch of people where, you know, where even I can feel safe to just say, heck with it, let's go for it, let's see what happens.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
Yeah. So far I haven't failed miserably.
Dare to fail.
But, you know, stand by. Well, any other comments? I know you wanted to get out of here early because you have a lunch because today is graduation.
Yeah, today is graduation in our School of Public Health. So, but if are there any other questions?
They'll type them in, but they just won't say them. We're going to work on this. I'm going to send everyone a microphone at their own home, and they can practice in front of the mirror.
If no one is coming forward, I would like, this is Joachim Fischer from Europe again. Wick really got me thinking since I've been flying back from Colorado where we met, and this is kind of 3 weeks ago. Hey, you know, I'm wasting my time with consulting BMW. And I was reading about big people like Martin Luther King with his I Have a Dream, or Kennedy, and I thought, you know, how can we public health people make a difference? And about a week ago, I'm living in a city with 320,000 inhabitants, and we get the entire migrant problems, inequality problems you could think of in Germany. So it's kind of a cool place. There's industry, there's every day, just no sleek Wall Street bankers. That's what's missing. And I thought, what if we come up with a very simple proposal? We say we want, by prevention, want to add 1 year of healthy lifetime to every citizen, and we want just spend $100 per person per year and get a 3-on-1 return on investment. And we make this happen. And then we have to start thinking out of the box. What is really adding valuable lifetime? So suddenly you don't think in prevention programs, but you think about how do you get that child with the IQ of 100 not to end in primary school but go to the college. So you start thinking differently. And what I would like to see the public health people is to really start this daydreaming and think, you know, there are enough scientific papers, there are enough wellness programs, there are enough take 5 a day, and even the inventor of 5 a day says it's bullshit. Leonard Syme says it's the worst thing I've ever told because nobody does 5 a day. So we're generating a bunch of losers because I can't even do 5 a day. I do 3 a day. It's highly successful. So how could we, as people who are involved in that business, think and daydream, and in our little field, think of if we were Kennedy just in our little thing, how could we generate a dream that generates such an enormous power that what Kennedy did on September 17th when he said we get a man to the moon. Everybody thought he was crazy and it couldn't be done. And I recently read a writing on the wall somewhere where they said everybody said it couldn't be done until someone came and did it. And you did it with Health Media, Vic. So the question really to everyone in the audience is think about, if you listen to that purpose and all thing, how could you generate that dream within your sphere of influence and just make it happen? And what I've been observing by looking for examples like this, there is, for example, a mayor in Germany in a little village who just made it happen. He stopped the obesity epidemic in children, and now the property prices are increasing and the fertility rate in the village because people like to go there, live there, and they think it's a cool place to have children. So I think we should, all of us, be encouraged by what Wick has been doing, that a man can make a difference and a woman can make a difference and everyone can make a difference. And it may be that little person who pulls up the flower to the right place of that unconscious that may be coming alive. But that is really something where I feel the public health field is kind of, yes, the government should do it, and finally they get the Obamacare right, and they get this right, and they get that right, then I may eventually do, and we're all busy with our day-to-day programs, but we don't really sit back, spend an afternoon, and just daydream and say, you know, if I would going, how could I enthusiast other people to some goal where we make a difference right here, there, regardless of what happens with Obamacare and the next government and everything.
Wow. That's such a great way to end this. Thank you, Joachim. I loved what you said. Thank you.
I guess we can only do it minute by minute.
Yeah. I'm going to head off to graduation, if that's okay, and
I think you should.
Graduate here.
I think you should. But thank you so much. And, you know, please let us know what we can do to contribute to your good work.
Thank you. And really, if you are interested in collaborating in this kind of worksite intervention, please let me know. I'm very interested in that through the summer. Thank you very much.
Well, count me in, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Bye-bye.
Thanks.